Hello everyone, today is 28th of January, now it's 9:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Later on today I will publish second news update on my Patreon and Boosty pages, and if you are looking for more news from Russia, more commentary, or if you like my work and want to support this small independent project from Russia, you're more than welcome to join our communities on Patreon or Boosty. Links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. That's being said, let's go through some news now, and I will start with this report from TASS News Agency, about which I spoke in yesterday's second update on Patreon. And news is that Russian armed forces liberated Nikolaeva Darina settlement in the Kursk salient area. This is northern western side of Kursk salient. This is the settlement, by the way, that we are talking about, this part here. And the progress of the counter-terrorist operation in Kursk salient area continues, and if a final decision is made by Russian General Staff to clear their territory, this borderline area, from invading forces of the Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries, I guess it will take just about 3 to 5 weeks to decimate whatever is, remains from initial invading force of the Kiev regime and their reserves, right? At this point, Kiev regime has in its disposal about 35,000 troops in this direction. 10 to 12, 15,000 is in the Kursk salient itself, and the additional 15 to 20,000 as a reserve is kept in the Sumy region. Although yet again it depends on plans of general staff, obviously, of Russian armed forces. They might take some time, as I said in previous updates, just to keep this grouping of forces, Kiev regime, busy in this area, while Russian forces advancing significantly in other sectors of their hostilities. Meanwhile, RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian armed forces conducted the long-range precise strikes on military airfields of the Kiev regime in different areas. This morning, Russian media reported about strikes, long-range precise strikes on military airfields in Nikolaev and Odessa regions. Some videos are circulating about with explosions, although it is difficult to say how effective or resultative these strikes were. Maybe during the day we will receive some additional information, but I want to point out that lately, almost every single day, Russian media is reporting, based on Defense Ministry, that there were long-range strikes on military airfields of the Kiev regime, and as a result of it, maybe as a result of it, we did not hear about cruise missile launches by Kiev regime and their NATO backers to strike deep into Russian territory with Storm Shadow cruise missiles or Scalp-EG cruise missiles, right? For quite a while now, we did not hear any such news, so I guess these long-range strikes on Kiev regime's airfields definitely are effective. And also I think it worth pointing out that since the inauguration of the Trump, there was no reports about long-range strikes deep into Russian territory with US-made ATACMS missiles. Also, maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe Trump's administration banned these long-range strikes with ATACMS missiles deep into Russian territory. There were reports that HIMARS missiles were launched. Yesterday, for example, I saw a report that 4 HIMARS rockets were intercepted, but I believe Kiev regime is quite capable of launching HIMARS rockets, although when it comes to ATACMS ballistic missiles, obviously they need their flight path and targeting data from US. And since the inauguration of Trump, at least in Russian media, there were no reports about ATACMS were being launched, or Storm Shadow cruise missiles of British origin, or the Scalp-EG cruise missiles of French origin. So maybe yet again, maybe coincidence, or maybe some decisions were made to stop these long-range missile strikes on Russia. Although unfortunately, drone strikes continue. And this morning, Russian media reported that 5 drones, for example, were intercepted over the Smolensk region. No detailed information about casualties or more or less significant damage at this point. Also, there were reports that several drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region. Scale of a drone attack at this time is relatively small compared to, for example, drone strike that formerly Kyiv regime conducted a couple of days ago when 124 drones were intercepted overnight and early hours of the morning by Russian air defense systems. But still, unfortunately, drone strikes continues. Let's go through some other news now. And well, interesting, RBK news agency is reporting that Zelensky, head of this terrorist regime in Kiev, Nazi and terrorist regime in Kiev, once again spoke about nuclear weapons, which is definitely something that worth paying attention to, because as I said many times before, in my personal opinion, next stage of escalation with Russia that Western ruling class is planning is to transform Kyiv regime into a nuclear armed regime. And for some time, for a number of days, Kyiv regime officials and Western media was quiet about nuclear Ukraine, but well, no longer. Zelensky gave an interview to Italian, I believe it's Italian media outlet Il Foglio, and during this interview, he once again spoke about nuclear weapons. That was, according to him, Ukraine give up for false security guarantees, while Ukraine should demand joining NATO for that. Although, by the way, unfortunately, because there is no longer journalism exists in the West, right? All true reporters are in the independent media, and no journalists are left in MSM. So therefore, these claims by Kyiv regime's officials or Western officials that Ukraine, this former Soviet republic, somehow give up its nukes, I mean, it's false, right? No one is challenging these people that Ukraine never had no nukes, right? It was the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons, and Russia is the only legal successor recognized as such by world community of Soviet Union. So all the Soviet nukes were Russian nukes once Soviet Union was dissolved. It's simple as that, right? By the way, when I was young, I saw with my own eyes SS-20 intermediate ballistic missiles in Tbilisi, in Georgia. I guess several times, by the way. I guess that was happening during the preparations for parades or something when these systems were rolled out. And that means that these missiles, SS-20s, that eventually, as a result of treaty between USSR and the US, these SS-20 missiles were destroyed, very capable missile systems. But this was on nuclear carriers, right? These were nuclear carriers. So if SS-20s were in Georgia, that means nuclear weapons were also based in Georgia. But these missiles were never Georgian missiles, right? Or these warheads, nuclear warheads, were never Georgian nuclear warheads. It was a Soviet nukes, right? And eventually it became Russian nukes because, yet again, world community recognized only Russia as a successor of the USSR. And this is for a reason, by the way. It was Russia that paid back all the debt that the Soviet Union had, right? It's Russia that maintains all the obligations that Soviet Union had. No any other republic but Russia, right? So Russia is recognized as a successor of Soviet Union for a reason. But anyways, it is disturbing that Western propaganda outlets and Zelensky is once again talking about nukes I would not be surprised at all if Zelensky and his inner circle, with some assistance, with some support from their Western masters, among intelligence community in US, in UK per se, maybe in some other countries, will even try to blackmail Trump's administration now. That if you give up on us, we're gonna go nuclear or something like that. Because what is the point talking about this nonsensical subject, nonsensical matter, time after time after time, right? That Ukraine give up nukes. Ukraine never give up no nukes because it did not had any to begin with, right? So hopefully Trump's administration will look at this matter, and I hope his appointees in US security services, in the Pentagon, will make sure that no US involvement will be in potential attempts, at least, by certain groups in the West and the Kyiv regime to transform it into a nuclear armed regime. Because obviously it's going to be totally devastating for, it might cause totally devastating consequences for entire world, right? You tell me, dear friends, why Western propaganda and the Kyiv regime, or the number of Western public figures, time after time after time, talking about this nuclear weapons in regards to Kyiv regime? Why? If they have no plans for further escalation with Russia as a next phase to transform Kyiv regime into a nuclear armed regime. You know, these narratives are created for a reason, isn't it? Meanwhile, by the way, RT is reporting that Ukrainian spy community or intelligence community denies their boss's warning that country could collapse. Yesterday, a number of Ukrainian media outlets and then media outlets worldwide start reporting that the head of main intelligence directorate of so-called Ukraine's defense ministry, Kirill Budanov, who is designated as a terrorist, by the way, in Russia, because he is a terrorist, right, and a mass murderer, and hopefully he will face consequences for all his crimes soon. So, according to those media reports, this criminal, Budanov, stated during a close meeting in a state Rada, which is Ukraine's so-called parliament, or pigsty, I will say. So in that pigsty, there was a closed-door meeting between criminals of all sorts and the terrorists, including Budanov, and he, at one point, he told, allegedly, to other his terrorist colleagues that if Kyiv will not start peace talks with Russia, and if hostilities is not ended, then Ukraine's statehood may be in question for as soon as incoming summer, right? And later on, Kyiv regime start denying these claims of the media outlets, and that's from where this information is coming. So Ukraine's main directorate of intelligence of their Ministry of Defense has sought to dismiss reports claiming its chief, Kirill Budanov, warned that their country's survival could be at risk if Kyiv does not agree to peace talks with Moscow. The alleged comments were reported on Monday by the local outlet Strana. Strana UA is a Ukrainian propaganda outlet, obviously. Also, Ukrainska Pravda or some other outlet also write about it, and some other so-called media there in Ukraine initially. But anyways, their alleged comments were reported on Monday by the local outlet Strana, which cited sources claiming that Budanov had made their remarks during a closed-door parliamentary season. One of their people reportedly present at the meeting told the outlet that top military officials, including officers from the general staff, delivered their sensitive briefing. Budanov was quoted as allegedly warning lawmakers in Kiev that if there are no serious negotiations by summer, very dangerous processes could begin for the very existence of Ukraine. In response, their main intelligence directorate issued a statement on a Telegram on Monday rejecting the quote as a false and urging media outlets to refrain from spreading rumors, unverified and officially unconfirmed information, especially regarding critical national security matters. So they are denying that Budanov says anything like that, but who cares, man, what Budanov said? If he really spoke to other terrorists in the Kiev regime, that existence of the so-called Ukraine statehood could be questioned by some, or if there is no peace talks, well, that's in one sense it's a good thing, because they are realizing that their time is running out, right? But in other hand, who needs any statements from Kiev regime, by the way? Everybody who follows the developments and well enough informed knows perfectly well that once this conflict will end, Ukraine, at least as we knew it, will no longer exist on the political map. It's just factual, right? It's just factual. Most likely, as I said many times before, western parts of Ukraine eventually will end up under NATO control and will be reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania, and the rest of the territory of this former Soviet Republic, directly or indirectly, will be controlled by Moscow, including Kiev and surrounding few regions, if they will maintain quasi-statehood on the political map, landlocked quasi-statehood. That's it. So Ukraine, as we knew it, already is not existing, right? And will definitely not exist when this conflict will end. It's, you know, you don't really need to be genius of geopolitics to understand that, right? RT is meanwhile reporting that even if high-ranking terrorists in the Kiev regime are now pushing the narrative that peace talks are necessary, as some groups in the Western countries are doing, when it comes to peace talks itself, at this point, all we see is some ideas that are floating on the surface that are completely unacceptable for Russia. For example, freezing of the conflict, deployment of NATO troops as a sort of peacekeepers, and delay of Ukraine's accession to NATO for 15, 20, or 25 years. Totally nonsensical ideas, but anyways, Russian high-ranking diplomat reacted once again on this topic, this time Rodion Miroshnik, and he said that unauthorized so-called peacekeepers in Ukraine will be a legit target for Russian side. So any Western so-called peacekeepers deployed to Ukraine without Moscow's approval would become legitimate target, military targets. Senior Russian diplomat Rodion Miroshnik has stated. The statement was made in response to EU Military Committee Chairman Robert Brigger's interview on Saturday with the Die Welt, in which the general suggested that a ceasefire in Ukraine conflict could be enforced by EU and their international peacekeepers under a UN mandate. By the way, did you see how hard these Western so-called officials, those criminals actually, are trying to distance this idea from NATO? They are saying EU peacekeepers. Since when EU has an army, for God's sake? What EU peacekeepers? EU member states do have armies, and these EU member states, literally all of them are NATO member states. I believe all of them, right? So it's a NATO troops, it's not EU troops that they are talking about. And obviously, in any case, this idea is absolutely unacceptable for Russia. There will be no freezing of the conflict, and there will be no NATO peacekeepers, so-called peacekeepers, right? At least outside of the Western Ukraine. And Rodion Miroshnik is very clear on that any contingent entering the territory of Ukraine without the consent and permission of the Russia is a military target with quite understandable consequences. So that's once again official statements from Russian diplomat. That's official position of Russia, and answer to the questions that still are circulating on internet. What will Russia do if NATO peacekeepers are deployed? There will be no NATO peacekeepers, by the way, there. Outside of the Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine, whole different story. We don't really care about that area. I mean, majority of us anyways, right? And meanwhile, on the very topic of this potential negotiations between Moscow and Western major capitals, Washington, first of all, well, Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, literally asked every day by journalists if there was any contacts from Washington to organize meeting or phone conversation between the presidents of two countries, US and Russia. And journalists are asking because of the statements that we are hearing from Washington, isn't it? From Trump himself, from his inner circle. And every single day, Peskov is forced basically to reiterate what he already said in previous days, that at this point, despite all the statements and talks, there was not a single attempt to reach Russian side and organize any conversation between the two leaders. And I think it's a good thing, by the way, that White House did not yet contact the Kremlin to organize at least 4 conversations between presidents. And I think it is a good thinker, because probably Trump and his inner circle, they are realizing that all these ideas that they initiate to float on the surface about freezing of the conflict, deployment of NATO troops, delaying Ukraine's accession to NATO, they are realizing, listening to Russian side, that all these ideas are non-starters, right? Moscow will not even consider to talk about these topics, right? And therefore, obviously, Trump and Putin, to have a meaningful conversation, Washington has to come up with some new ideas, new approaches that will make sense for Russian side, right? And therefore, I think it is a good indicator, really, that Washington is not in no hurry to organize this phone conversation, because right now, if Washington is not ready, if Washington has no concrete new detailed ideas, or at least framework, right? Approximate framework that can be acceptable for Russian side, then about which topics, about what Trump and Putin gonna talk about. Okay, they will say to each other, you know, hello, how are you, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then what? You know, they're not gonna talk about weather, right? So it is good that Washington is taking time. Let them take a week, 2, 3 months, whatever time is necessary to work on new ideas, new approaches that will be acceptable for Russian side, so that two presidents will have a meaningful conversation. And that meaningful conversation definitely can lay down ground for future negotiations, and maybe even face-to-face meeting, right? And through the escalation between US and Russia. And if relationships are improving, let's say between US and Russia, that means that many countries in the collective West will obviously follow example of Washington. So that's also news. And by the way, before I continue, let me notice that this channel, this small media project is independent small media project from Russia. Is completely subscriber funded, and that's why it's independent. And so if you like my work, if you like my channels on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, lately I've become quite active on Twitter X also. So if you like my work, please consider to support this project with a donation through PayPal. I have PayPal again, by the way, new account, and you can use that PayPal link. Also Boosty, by the way, Boosty platform. is very useful. Obviously, you can donate through Boosty platform also, or subscribe to my Patreon page and their page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content, by the way. Second updates and some other not necessarily political content. So I'm trying to maintain these pages interesting. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment, including crypto wallet, just in case you are good with a crypto. And yes, dear friends, subscribe to my Twitter X, please. Our community here is 1062 at this point. And once we will reach 2000 members, I believe I will have opportunity to monetize, to apply for monetization. I don't really know how it works, really, and if it will be helpful for this project. But, let's try. So if you are on Twitter, please consider to subscribe to my page there also. It's link is also on this video in description box and the pinned comment. That's been said, let's continue with some more news, and this is definitely interesting report from Kommersant newspaper that Iran is confirming deliveries of Su-35 Russian 4++ generation fighter jets, which is definitely big deal, I believe, especially if you take in account that according to some reports, Russia is supporting Iran with long-range radio-electronic warfare and long-range detection, right? And now Su-35s are delivered. Initially, there was, according to some contracts, by the way, I guess details of military cooperation between the sides are classified, but some sources are reporting that initially there was a contract in place to deliver 25 Su-35 fighter jets to Iran, but later on Tehran changed its mind and they purchased additional 25. So overall 50 Su-35s to be delivered to Iranian Air Force, and first batch of these planes already in hands of Iran's Air Force. And this is definitely a big deal, because if you ask me, Su-35s are best fourth generation fighter jets ever existed, literally best. I know I spoke about this yesterday on Patreon in second update. I know members of our community from US may disagree. They might say that, latest generation of F-15s are also very good planes. And it is true, by the way, F-15 always was a good plane, right? Always. And latest generations definitely are extremely capable. Friends of ours from our community from Sweden might say that, Saab is producing also great planes, which is also true. Saab clearly produces greater planes. French members of our community can say Rafale is a greater fourth generation plane, which is also true, by the way. Nothing to be said about Eurofighters, which is also very capable. But I'm from Russia, right? I'm a Russian citizen. I'm a big fan of Soviet era and Russian era military aviation in general. And if you ask me, my personal opinion is that Su-35 looks better than any other fourth gen fighter, and it is better than any other fourth gen fighter. So, and in any case, Su-35 is definitely gonna increase significantly capabilities of Iranian Air Force. That's the main point in this news, really. So I guess US militaries, NATO militaries in general, will pay close attention to this report and this development, and also Israeli militaries and their leadership will definitely pay attention to it. Meanwhile, by the way, some disturbing news is coming from US-Mexico border. RT is reporting that Mexican cartels open fire on US border patrol. This was reported by Fox News initially. So US border patrol agents have reportedly come under fire from suspected Mexican cartel members in southern Texas during an attempted illegal border crossing. US President Donald Trump declared a national emergency at the border with Mexico last week and deployed the military to several crossings while seeking to deport potentially millions of people inside the country that are there illegally. Border Patrol agents near Fronton, Texas, were fired upon from Mexico by suspected cartel gunmen as a group of illegal aliens were being brought across the river. It's a Rio Grande River, isn't it there? Fox News correspondent Bill Milligan reported on Monday afternoon, citing multiple law enforcement sources. And, well, this is definitely bad news. US border guards are doing their job and they should be safe, right? And, well, what this Mexican cartel is gonna achieve by firing at US law enforcement agencies members is that US might really declare war on them. Trump may really declare war on drug cartels, right? And I mean, US definitely is in position to obliterate them, literally, right? Different question is, will that really help with the epidemic, drug epidemic in US itself, until some social and educational programs are in place to make sure, and some reforms are conducted, including in regards to US medical system and pharmacy and so on, to make sure that there is no demand on the drugs, because until you have demand, high demand on drugs, these criminals will find a way to deliver, right? But in any case, drug cartels gonna provoke on themselves some hellfire, really. If Trump's administration will say, you know what, go after them, if they will tell to CIA and Pentagon, right? And it's gonna be big deal, obviously. Although, first of all, if any military operation starts, obviously Washington should consult with Mexico and take any action with Mexico's official approval. Otherwise, world will tractate US involvement in military involvement as an invasion, because it will be invasion. If Mexico is against it, then if you are conducting military operations on its territory, it's an invasion, right? But when it comes to these criminal organizations, any sorts of criminal organizations, including drug cartels, you know what? Obliterate them. Just exterminate these criminals, man. I will support any actions against criminals anywhere in this world, by the way. That's how I feel. Meanwhile, TASS news agency is reporting that Lula da Silva, president of Brazil, is intended to visit Moscow while during the celebration of 80th anniversary of their victory in Great Patriotic War, which will take place on 9th of May, obviously all around Russia, and obviously in Moscow too. And this is a great news, by the way. I believe many other world leaders will also visit Russia. As far as I know, Chinese leader Xi Jinping is also intended to visit Russia. Hopefully, India's prime minister will visit Russia on 9th of May, and many other leaders worldwide. And you know what? It will be great, really, if Trump will visit Moscow also on 9th of May. I mean, it is hardly possible. I understand that, but I mean, it is possible, theoretically speaking, at least, right? And meanwhile, by the way, I just mentioned Trump, so he's obviously making headlines in Russian media, big time, almost every day. And now this report from TASS is saying that Trump ordered to come up with a project for US analog of Iron Dome in 60 days. So Trump he promised that, he spoke about it during the election campaign, that US will create its own version of the Iron Dome that will protect entire US territory. It's not possible, I can tell you straight away. By the way, US is a huge country, massive country. There is no way entire US territory can be protected by air defense systems. It's not possible. It will cost so much that US hardly can afford that kind of stuff, and it will demand so many people that US air defense will have more military staff than ground forces or air force, or so it is obviously just kind of PR stunt, because there countries like US, Russia, Canada, China, huge countries, massive countries, right? They cannot develop air defense systems that can protect the entire area, all of it, simultaneously. It's just technically impossible, right? Russia has the best air defense systems in the world, their multi-layered air defense system, but even Russia, if you take into account vastness of Russian territory, cannot ensure that every single square meter everywhere is protected. It's just technically impossible, right? Even smaller countries, tiny countries compared to Russia or US, like Israel, by the way, even Israel with its very advanced air defense systems are unable to constantly 100% protect their entire airspace from incoming threats, right? Aerial threats. So this is obviously PR stunt, although simultaneously, obviously this is a gesture of goodwill towards military industrial complex, because if this agenda will work, if US public will buy into it, that US is gonna create a defense system that can capable of protecting entire territory. And by the way, not many people really, not that many people, I guess, in US will dig into details how possible it is. And the idea itself that entire US is protected, of course, will be popular, right? Why not, if possible? And so, yes, this idea will have, I guess, public support, at least on initial stages, which will allow Trump's administration to allocate billions and billions and billions, tens of billions, by the way, potentially hundreds of billions or even trillions, to a military industrial complex to create a US analog of the Iron Dome. That's how money being stolen, by the way, for decades and decades from public, and then transfer it to military industrial complex and all these multinational corporations, with ideas, with their such unrealistic ideas that sounds good but are not really plausible. But anyways, one should expect a significant increase, very significant increase in US military spendings, because air defense systems are costly, by the way, very costly. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Trump is also authorizing, once again, oil and gas extraction from Alaska, in Alaska to begin, in national parks even, by the way. Although, almost entire Alaska is a national park, so, so the US government plans to reallow oil and gas production in their protected lands of the state of Alaska. As US President Donald Trump said on Monday, the reserves of these deposits will be able to meet the demand from all of Asia. Well, I don't know about all of Asia, but US, to maintain current level of oil and gas production, definitely needs more territories to be developed for fracking, right? And fracking is, by the way, one of the most poisonous stuff that can be done to ground, right? It's devastating stuff for ground, but this technology allowed this fracking revolution did allow US to become self-sufficient in terms of energy, right? Oil and gas, and not just self-sufficient, but US is actually one of the biggest exporters of their gas, LNG, for this moment. So obviously, energy companies want more areas to be available for them to dig in and extract oil and gas. I can understand, but same time, fracking technology or even ordinary extraction, traditional ways of extraction of oil and gas, it's a quite costly stuff, isn't it? And what about U.S. Trump's recent statements that Saudi Arabia and OPEC countries should cut oil prices on oil market, which can be done only if they are flooding market with their additional volumes of oil and gas, right? If Washington manages to force Saudi Arabia and other OPEC member states to really dump huge volumes of oil on a daily basis on the market, then what U.S. energy company is gonna say about this? Huh? It's a question, isn't it? Did Trump think about how costly for U.S. companies also it is to extract oil and gas? And there is a certain level below which extraction of oil and oil production or gas production is just economically non-profitable. So yes, this is one more demonstration, by the way, that time to time or even quite often, Trump might say something that don't really makes any sense, and he will not follow on those statements. And one of the examples is this recent statements that he will, that Saudi Arabia and OPEC countries should bring down prices. No, man, it's not possible. It's not possible because it's economically it will destroy U.S. energy companies first of all, right? And Saudi Arabia will suffer in ways that are, So that's also links, by the way, between different regions and their kind of different topics, but there is always some links. Meanwhile, RT is reporting that Nvidia suffers record one-day stock market value drop. So Nvidia's stock plummeted 17% on Monday, raising approximately 589 billion from its market capitalization and marking the largest single-day loss in US corporate history. The sharp decline follows concerns over mounting competition from Chinese artificial intelligence firm DeepSeek. And by the way, yesterday I reported about these developments on my Telegram channel, Twitter X also, and during the second update on Patreon. What happened is that, yes, this DeepSeek AI, Chinese AI, which cost to develop immensely less than ChatGPT, for example. OpenAI's ChatGPT, this DeepSeek actually started beating ChatGPT on Western markets, on app stores, right? Latest update on that Chinese DeepSeek was, I guess, big deal, and there are people actually start preferring this DeepSeek. And what happened is that yesterday there was a massive hacker attack on DeepSeek. Massive. I guess this attack was organized by very firms, very companies that suffered from from DeepSeek, right? Financially and reputationally. I will say this was maybe first true AI war that we observe, and the Chinese side was basically forced to almost shut down DeepSeek. They shut down DeepSeek for the rest of the world, but Chinese I mean, in China it was still accessible. I guess now DeepSeek is operational again. I didn't check, but when I saw those reports, by the way, I was thinking, you know what, Nvidia and OpenAI and all the other Microsoft and all the other companies that are working in this field, they get pissed very much, right? And maybe they authorize them, maybe they use their own AIs that they have to organize DDoS attack on DeepSeek or some, you know, some attack. And if that is the case, by the way, it's really first AI war, isn't it? That we observe. I guess Chinese side will retaliate, and it is a big deal, man. These AIs are playing more and more important roles in everyday life. Sometimes we just don't even realize that we are using AI services on daily basis. Every time you Google something, you are using AI, right? Every time you ask her any app or anything, you are using AI. And so, yes, it is a big deal. And overall, by the way, the sell-off was a part of a broader tech downturn that saw the Nasdaq composite fail 3.1%. It's worst day since December. Nvidia shares closed at $118.58, marking the most significant drop since March 2020 during the early days of COVID-19 pandemic. Monday's plunge also dethroned Nvidia as the world's most valuable publicly traded company at 2.9 trillion, pushing it back to third place behind Apple and Microsoft. And that's why, by the way, I'm saying all these multi-trillion dollar companies in US, Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, and the rest of them, these are bubbles. These are just bubbles, by the way, that can burst anytime. And yesterday confirmed what I was saying, isn't it? If it was not bubble, how come that Nvidia lost almost 600 billion in a single day? Right? And on some sources, by the way, I read that as a result of yesterday's drop in the prices of shares of top companies that are trading in US market, overall loss was some 3 trillion something. I'm not expert in all this stuff, but I mean, numbers are huge, by the way, isn't it? Numbers are huge. Nvidia alone lost 589 billion in its market capitalization. And finally, dear friends, I will share with you this news that EU prolongs their anti-Russian sanctions. So EU foreign ministers have agreed to extend the bloc's economic sanctions on Russia after Hungary dropped a last-minute threat to block their extension over Ukraine's refusal to restart the flow of Russian gas to the EU. Hungary's foreign minister Peter Szijjártó stated that Brussels promised Budapest to secure energy interests of the Hungary and their other EU member states. I'm not sure you can trust Brussels on anything really, but I mean, hardly anyone will go hard on Hungary because they are already under heavy pressure, isn't it? Hungary, Slovakia, they are under heavy pressure from Western ruling class, from Brussels, for their attempts to maintain independence and the sovereignty, right? And therefore, I don't think they need more heat at this point. They are not ready for that. Maybe in 6 months' time. Maybe in 6 months' time, when one of the strongest allies of these countries, US and US administration, will be in a better shape. It's just a few days really that Trump's administration is in office. Give it 6 months, they will, you know, I guess they will get more involved in EU policies. And if forces that are behind the Trump and his team really are planning to shift their focus on China from proxy war against Russia, then probably we will see the escalation with Russia, and that will definitely make positions of countries like Hungary, Slovakia, some others in Europe more stronger because they will have a US backing. But now they cannot withstand pressure of all those Russophobes and the psychopaths that are in charge of European Union and influential groups among Western ruling class that want to continue this proxy war against us, against Russia. This is it for now, dear friends. Hopefully you will find this update informative, interesting, useful, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary about any topic, really. This is the only way we can try and influence algorithm so that maybe or potentially video will be shown in recommendations to the people that may have interest in news from Russia. And so yes, for very same reason, if you can, please share information about my channel with your friends in real life or on internet. And finally, if you like my work and want to support, you can do it. All the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Second update later on my Patreon, but for now this is it. Have a wonderful day and take care.